Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Caleb. Today we're discussing Marvel Snap again, and this time it is featured locations. They happen every Wednesday in Marvel Snap, and a featured location is going to be a new location being added to the game, and it is going to appear 40% more frequently during games. Once again, Marvel Snap is a location-based card game, so this location is going to have an impact on the meta. Now, Eternity Range will be the featured location from 3 a.m. UTC January 4th, and it'll last for 48 hours through January 6th. For the United States, which is where a majority of my viewers come from, that's going to be 10 p.m. on January 3rd on Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. for Central, 8 for Mountain, and then 7 p.m. for Pacific. Now, what does Eternity Range do? New location? Nobody's seen it yet. After turn 3, Eternity Range adds a rock to the losing player's side. Now, this can be used to either player's advantage by being a card that can be buffed or destroyed, or it could be to their disadvantage by being a lower power card that takes up space at the location, right? So, to help you better understand how to take advantage of Eternity Range, I want to go over cards that synergize well with the location, and then I'll show off some decks that I've made to give you ideas on what to build while the featured location is active. So cards that are going to synergize well with the location are going to be cards that either take advantage of the rock being there, cards that get you power early to give your opponent the rock, other things that disrupt, as well as things that buff. So to start, I want to talk Sunspot and Rocket Raccoon. So Sunspot and Rocket Raccoon are two cards that I really like, that I think you could play early on, right? And then other cards, much like this, that give you power early in the game, right? If you drop Sunspot early and then just pass a couple turns, it's very likely that you'll have more power in that lane by the time turn 3 ends, so then you'll be able to give your opponent the rock if you don't want it on your side of the board. The same thing goes for Rocket Raccoon. Rocket is a card that you're going to be able to drop onto the board, and if your opponent is trying to give you the rock, well, then they're going to be buffing up your Rocket Raccoon because they've played a card there, so you're just getting more power. So cards like that, right? Really think any of the, I have Star-Lord here? No, I don't have Star-Lord, but right, think basically any of the Guardians cards, those things that you can put down early, get buffed up, right? Namely Rocket, Star-Lord, and Groot, because those are the three that you can play on curve. But cards like that, I think, are going to be really valuable in this meta while Eternity Range is active. The next card I want to talk about is Adam Warlock. I think that this is a card that could see actually a very interesting interaction with this location. If you're able to get Adam Warlock down early, right, as well as win that location, you give your opponent a rock, and it's going to be really hard for them to come back if they're not playing some type of Patriot, Destroy, Khazar style deck, right? If they're not playing something in that archetype and that rock just has to sit there, that lane, generally speaking, should be weaker, right? So if you've got more power, you can drop that Adam Warlock, and then you can start drawing through your deck as well, which is going to help you see more cards, which means you're more likely to get your strategy to pop off because you've got the cards in your hand. Next, I just wanted to discuss Carnage, and realistically, Carnage is there just to cover for all of the cards in the Destroy archetype. Having just an extra rock put onto your side of the field can be very valuable in a Destroy archetype. It synergizes really well with Carnage, and I guess like Killmonger too, if you're trying to pop off a death by killing a bunch of really cheap stuff. So I think death archetypes are going to be really good while Eternity Range is active. Next up is going to be Falcon. Falcon is a great card because even if you lose Eternity Range, you can drop Falcon and then just bring it back, right? So any style of bounce deck, right, that might be playing the Collector, right, you can play Falcon, you can play Beast, something like that. If you don't want the rock on the board, you can pick it up. It just becomes a dead card in your hand, which then you do have to worry about hand size. Make sure that you don't get yourself up to 7 cards, because then otherwise you won't be able to draw, through your deck. But this is definitely a strategy that you can use while Eternity Range is active to deal with that rock. Next up is going to be Viper, and basically any other kind of disruptive card. You can definitely play very, very disruptive, right? If you think Viper, if you think Storm, if you think Debris, right? If you're winning the lane and your opponent has the rock on their side, right? Then Storm stops the lane what does Storm do? Storm floods the lane. That's what she does. Storm floods the lane, and then they can't do anything. They're stuck with that rock there, right? You think debris, you can put debris in a different lane. They've got a lane with 2 rocks in it, right? If you lose, you can play the Viper, and Viper can throw the rock onto your opponent's side of the board, right? You can also play things like Polaris, right? Move that rock around if necessary. I guess you could also play, what's the other card I was thinking of? Oh, Green Goblin, right? You could play Green Goblin on top of that Viper as well, and that's like a really cheeky way to really fill up your opponent's side of the board with cards that are just completely useless to them, most likely. So playing disruptive decks and control decks, I think, could see you know, some success. You could see some success if you're playing with decks like that, while you know, while we've got Eternity Range going on. Then I want to talk kind of cards that buff, so I'll touch on the Patriot and the Khazar. So Patriot and Khazar obviously are going to give the rock a buff. Khazar buffing all of your 1-cost cards, right? That's going to make the rock stronger. And then Patriot is going to buff the rock because the rock doesn't have an ability. So things like Patriot, Khazar, Blue Marvel, Mystique, Onslaught, right? Cards like that are definitely going to see some play. And personally, actually, all of the deck lists that I've given, that I'm going to be discussing later in the video, those are all going to involve Khazar. Actually, I think Khazar is going to see a ton of play. It really just makes a lot of sense. I think Khazar is going to be really strong because regardless of if you get the rock or you give your opponent the rock, you're going to be able to get value out of that thing. So I just think Khazar is going to be really strong during this meta. The last card that I haven't discussed is Maximus. If you're really looking to make sure that your opponent gets that rock, cards like Maximus, cards like, what's the other one? That's a 7 power, really cheap card. Ebony Maw. Cards like that are going to be, I think, really good cards that you can play, because like 7 power in a lane by turn 3 is definitely pretty strong. So I think Maximus is going to be the better play simply because once you play Ebony Maw, you can't play anything else in that lane unless you've played something like a 0 first. So you have to kind of think about that, right? And while Ebony Maw is a thing that you can get down early, Maximus is a thing that you can get down early as well, but then also still have the ability to play in that lane afterwards. So I would personally go Maximus over Ebony Maw, but if you don't have Maximus, Ebony Maw I think is a great card to include in a deck to insert a bunch of power into that lane very, very early, especially in Khazar decks where on turn 3 it's very likely you've already played other 1-cost cards, and then you can just dump the rest of your hand, right, and then make sure that Ebony Maw is the last card played in that location. Another thing that I like about Khazar decks as well is that you're going to be able to play so many cards for so cheap that even if you do lose that lane, you might just not even get a rock because you're going to be able to put a bunch of cards into that lane, and if it's full, if that lane is full, you're not getting a rock. So these are the cards that I think synergize well with the location. I think that there's a lot of different ways that you could take your strategies while this location is active. And I mean, while really all it is just an extra rock on the board, it gives a lot of opportunity to a lot of different archetypes to take advantage and also be really messed up by this hot location. The first deck that I want to talk about is going to be a Pool 1 Khazar deck. So this deck is basically going to be, I would say, a pretty standard Pool 1 Khazar, right? We've got Ant-Man, Hawkeye, Squirrel Girl, Nightcrawler, Rocket Raccoon, and Blade, all of which are cards that you can drop very early and then take advantage of the Khazar, which we hope to get on the board later in the game. Next up, we've got Star-Lord. Star-Lord is a card, right, just like Rocket Raccoon. I talked about it. You can play it into that Eternity range, and then instead of you getting the rock, your opponent gets the rock. So even though you can make use of the rock with this deck, Star-Lord does give you the opportunity to get a lot of power into the lane and maybe put that rock over on your opponent's side of the board and hopefully slow them down a little bit. Now, next up, I've got Zabu and then Jessica Jones and Khazar. So while Zabu is a 3-cost card, and it's not technically Pool 1, it's a Season Pass card. The Season Pass is going to be releasing before this hot location, excuse me, it's a featured location, before this featured location goes active. So you will have access to Zabu even if you're in Pool 1 as long as you bought the Season Pass. So If you play Zabu, you can play Jessica Jones and you can play Khazar, and that has the potential to be a really, really strong turn. Because if you play Zabu, Jessica Jones and Khazar both become 2 costs. On turn 4, you can play both of them. And then on turns 5 and 6, you have the opportunity to play Blue Marvel and Onslaught, or just completely empty your hand if you've got just like a bunch of other 1 costs. I really like Zabu in this list, and I think Jessica Jones and Khazar are the premier 4 cost cards in Pool 1. Jessica Jones being able to be a 4/8, and then Khazar realistically just being probably the strongest win condition in Pool 1. I think being able to get both of those on the board for cheap with Zabu is going to be really, really nice. Like I said earlier, all of these deck lists are going to include Khazar, and Pool 2, I think, definitely has an opportunity to be great. We've got Ant-Man, Squirrel Girl, Sunspot, Iceman, Korg, Nightcrawler, Ebony Maw, Armor, Cosmo, Khazar, Blue Marvel, and Onslaught. Now, as I said earlier, right, we're running all of these 1 costs. I really like Ebony Maw. It's got a lot of power for a really, really small, like, it's got the same power as Onslaught does, and it's got, you know, only 1 energy cost. So while it does have the drawback of you can't play, you know, any more cards here, right, we do have the Nightcrawler, so we can move that thing into that lane. We've got the Khazar to buff it up. We've got Blue Marvel, buff it up. Onslaught, same deal, right? Then the other cards that we're running, right, Armor and Cosmo, those are just there to kind of be, you know, protective cards, right? Cosmo to counter Enchantress, because if we just drop a Cosmo in a lane and then Khazar, Blue Marvel, Onslaught, those cards are all ongoing and Enchantress can't stop them. And neither can Rogue either, although I don't remember if Rogue is a Pool 2 or a Pool 3 card right now. Yeah, but so then the rest of the cards, right, Ant-Man and Squirrel Girl, those just flood, well, Squirrel Girl floods cards onto the board. Ant-Man can just get powerful with other things in the lane. Sunspot, right, just buff itself up. Iceman and Korg slow your opponent down, right? And then we talked about Nightcrawler giving you reach, and then Ebony Maw just providing a lot of power. So I think that this has an opportunity to be really good Pool 2 deck. I don't think it's got like top tier pool deck or top tier Pool 2 you know, deck written all over it, but it should be serviceable while this featured location is active. The last deck list that I want to show off to you guys is going to be a Silver Surfer Patriot deck. So this deck I actually think has a lot of potential to be really good, because we're taking advantage of the possibility we get a rock, right? As well as just Silver Surfer and Patriot are very, very strong. So in order to get cards down early, we've got Ant-Man and Squirrel Girl, as well as Shocker. And then for our turn 3 and beyond plays, right, we have Silver Surfer and Patriot to provide those buffs, Mystique to copy either Patriot, Wong, and Khazar. You could also copy Zabu, but I don't really think I'd recommend that. We've got Brood to put a couple of cards onto the field very early, and they also can take advantage of the Patriot and the Silver Surfer. Zabu is going to help us get Wong and Khazar on the board for much cheaper than we normally would, and that should help our game plan progress a lot better. Then we've also got Debris, which Debris is actually kind of a fun card, because if you can drop Debris onto Wong, that's a ton of 1-cost cards that your opponent is going to have on their side of the field, and they're definitely not going to like it. We also, Debris gets buffed by Silver Surfer, and then the Patriot buff applies to the rocks that Debris throws onto the field. I really love Debris in this deck. I think it's so good. Let me see. Did I talk about Wong and Khazar? A little bit. Khazar, everybody knows. Wong also. Ultron flood the board with 1-cost cards. You take advantage of the Khazar. You take advantage of the Patriot. This deck, I think, has a lot of really great potential. If you wanted to do something different with this deck, which, like, obviously you could, maybe you don't want to run the Ultron Khazar, you could throw something in, like, I don't know, probably Blue Marvel and Dr. Doom, which if that's the case, I'd probably consider taking out Zabu and then maybe throwing in a different 3-cost card like Cyclops, so you get advantage, you take advantage of both the Silver Surfer and the Patriot. That would probably be a pretty good add, but there's definitely a lot of different ways that you could take this Pool 3 deck, so I just kind of wanted to put this one here as a bit of like an outline for just like something you could do, right? And maybe you want to change it up yourself, so absolutely feel free. I think that this deck definitely has potential, though, to be really solid during the featured location. Featured locations will affect your games while active, so you need to be ready. I hope I've helped you prepare well for the upcoming featured location Eternity Range. and that I've given you some good deck ideas regardless of the pool that you're in. I'd love to hear some feedback from you guys on the cards that I've recommended, the decks that I've built, and on the location itself. So please head down to the comment section, leave some comments, let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear from you and chat back. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider leaving a like, and if you want to stay up to date with me and all of my content, please consider subscribing. If you guys want to catch me streaming Marvel Snap live on Twitch, you can find me there at twitch.tv/mynamescaleb731. Thanks again for watching the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time. Peace out, my friends.